Hello and welcome to our special feature, Reviving India's Real Estate Landscape, for Namma Permanent Address, a joint initiative between CREDAI Bengaluru and Times of India, partnered by ET Now. With a severe liquidity crisis facing both consumers and corporates alike, has home ownership taken a back seat? Or is now perhaps the most opportune time to make money multiply by way of property ownership? It's a tough topic and it deserves to be approached from a 360-degree perspective. And fortunately, I'm joined by a highly distinguished panel of subject matter experts from CREDAI, the Confederation of Real Estate Developers Associations of India, to help me do just that. Please allow me to introduce our guests. We have with us the President of CREDAI Bengaluru and Managing Director, Jain Heights and Structures, Kishore Jain, Vice President, CREDAI National, and Chairman and Managing Director, Zonasha Estates and Projects, R. Nagaraj Reddy, Advisor of CREDAI Karnataka, Executive Committee Member, CREDAI National, and past President, CREDAI Bengaluru, A. Balakrishna Hegde. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Mr. Jain, I'd love to kick off the conversation with you. In light of the current scenario and the global crisis that we find ourselves in now, how has the outlook towards real estate investment changed? Are you perhaps now witnessing consumers and prospective clients migrate their money towards presumably safer asset classes?
See, this pandemic, when it hit it was very incomprehensible moment for everyone, including consumer, investor, and for the developer. And when the time passed, consumer understand the need of some permanency in their life, and that has changed the complete landscape of the real estate market. And same thing gone with the investor also. In fact, when we see the last year investment from the foreign investment, it went up to $4 billion, a hopping 11% of the total investment they have made into the country. And going forward, we could see the real estate investment from the FDI sector will be around 6 billion, a growth of over 50% over a period of time. This all substantiate the market from survival mode to revival. I think going forward it will be more on a thriving mode. So real estate market is going to thrive.
Well, Mr. Reddy, building on what Mr. Jain has said, do you believe that the consumer appetite for home ownership has transformed? And if so, in which direction?
Now every person in India, especially in India, today they want to have their asset for the future and as well as for the children's. Today they can't invest in anything else other than real estate. The best reason is the rate of interest is the decade low in today's scenario. Definitely it has given a lot of comfort level to a person to own his own house instead of staying in a tenanted house. So instead of paying a rent, he is paying as a EMI. That's a great opportunity. And the affordable segment, what our central government is announced 5 years back, definitely it has given a lot of comfort level to the investors to invest. That changed a lot of mindset in public as well as the investors, as well as anyone, even NRIs. For example, NRIs who are staying abroad in India, they also want to come back and invest in Bangalore or any part of India. It has given a lot of confidence.
Well, Mr. Hegde, taking a cue off of what the two gentlemen before you have said, how would you describe the current supply-demand dynamics?
Supply-demand last for about 4 years or so, from about 2016, there was a bit of an oversupply. It is not that oversupply was due to any lack of demand, it is more due to people waiting. Because in 2016, after that, the prices started stagnating. Sure. So when price stagnates, the natural tendency is to wait. Right. Okay, it will go down, it will go down. It never went down, it stagnated. Now is the time, see, two things have happened. One is, during pandemic, some people have been in their own houses, somewhere in their rented houses. But they found that the convenience of work from home is not there for many of them.
Very true.
So that has sort of triggered the need to have my own house, not only my own house, a house that is convenient in case something happens. 2, like Mr. Reddy said, interest rates. 3, as I told you, from 2016 till today, the rates have not gone up. That itself is a time correction.
Right.
And there is a tremendous hunger in the market. NBFCs and banks pushing their home loans. So these are all the things which are pushing demand up.
Well, Mr. Jain, against all of these evolving dynamics, how does a developer build brand loyalty in this market, in this environment?
Any developer, the focus of the customer, the demand and the expectation from the customer in current market, where the real estate is plagued with the liquidity issues and multiple challenges what we have seen in last couple of years. So every developer is going through those challenges. I think one factor which differentiates between a trusted branded player and the others is in terms of delivery. The developer who focuses on delivery and able to execute their project very well within the time, that will be the most differentiating factor.
And Mr. Reddy, what's so interesting is that many builders are now migrating towards this model where they're building leadership in both the luxury segment as well as the affordable housing segment. They're participating in both. How challenging is it to strike the right balance between the two and straddle those two completely different worlds?
No, in fact, actually, it is a good thing what even big builders, they have come up with these two segments. One is luxury as well as affordable. Today, anybody wants to invest, they first see whether he is a CREDAI member. That is giving a lot of confidence to the investors. Whether CREDAI member means they can go and approach CREDAI. So for any issues. And a CREDAI builder need not develop only luxury segments. He has to develop and take care of the medium and all, even small builders also. That's why now everyone has to give aggregate, because we can't differentiate, okay, luxury only CREDAI people will, non-luxury with our non-CREDAI people, no. So we want to cater everything.
And Mr. Hegde, CREDAI is very much the industry's voice when it comes to developers in the private sector. So what more would CREDAI like to see from the government in terms of real estate related reform and regulation?
For years and years, of course, there has been from 97 onwards, there has been some prop given to real estate. But I would like to see some bold, really bold reforms. Why do you have some of those small deductions, interest deduction? Just give some bold measures, like you see, GST. Right now, we do not have input credit. We charge 5%. We pay 18% on our on all the inputs.
Absolutely.
18% the cost of construction has gone up.
Right.
On top of it, the client, my purchaser, is charged with 5%. This is not the GST concept. As per GST concept, whatever has been paid has to be deducted before the last person is being charged.
Fair enough.
Which is not happening in the case of real estate. Land loans. We don't get loans on land. There should be some provision where banks are encouraged.
And Mr. Jain, I think Mr. Hegde has very beautifully outlined some of the reforms that he'd like to see. I'd love your take on the same. But in addition to that, how do you believe these reforms would ultimately shape the consumer mindset?
I think would like to add up what are the expectations from the government and how the policy reform can influence us and the consumer behavior. Along with GST and land financing, somewhere the government has to come up with a measure to incentivize consumers in terms of buying. Right now, the interest rate deduction is only up to 1.5 lakh rupees, which has been extended for another 1 month. Ideally, it should have been up to 3.5 lakh rupees. This would have incentivized those consumers. One. Second, in terms of principal deductions, it's not on a standalone basis. You'll club with multiple deductions, and there will be a capping. Okay? If the department and the government in particular can come out with those policy, and this can incentivize consumer, and in turn, the market will start thriving.
And Mr. Reddy, what do you believe is required for more foreign direct investment to infiltrate into the domestic real estate sector?
So, well, see, first of all, you are calling it real estate industry, but unfortunately, till today, we not got the industrial status for this organization. So, whether it is called a real estate industry or real estate service or real estate organization, we don't know. First, they have to, our government should bring as an industrial status to this. And we are regulated by all other industries. Suppose we want to invest, ask any foreign direct investment to real estate industry, they are not so comfortable for the policies and restrictions and rules and regulations which is imposed in each and every state. Because real estate is coming under each state. Each state is having different rules and regulations. It is very difficult for them to come and directly invest in real estate. So they have to choose a builder or somebody who can be a partner with them. Through them only they have to invest. So the government should encourage this one. They have to simplify the procedures to even foreign direct investments also to come into real estate.
So Mr. Hegde, in the real estate sector, credibility is king. And CREDAI affiliated builders seem to come with that stamp of credibility. Why is that? And what sort of resources are at their disposal that makes them successful in that regard?
You touched the right word, credibility. In fact, we are one of the first industry bodies, especially CREDAI Karnataka. In the year 1996, we came out with a code of conduct for all the builders, what they should do, what they should not do. All the do's and don'ts are listed there, including violations, no violations, what is carpet area, how should be sold, what kind of promotion they should do. Everything is listed out there. So ever since then, it's more than about 25 years, we have been practicing that. So that itself gives member credibility. CREDAI doesn't go and sit in offices of members and ask them to do. We are like a policy.
Right.
A government comes out with a policy which the general public has to follow. Similarly, CREDAI comes out with a policy, and general public, when it is follows, the credibility goes up. The second thing is the grievance committee, which we have called a committee for CGRF, for all the grievances to be resolved. Suppose a client, a purchaser has a problem, he can write to us. We will call the builder, we will call the purchaser, we will try and see if we can resolve the issue. And most of our 99.99% of the complaints received from the purchasers have been resolved at that level.
Mr. Jain, if CREDAI builders have a niche of their own, I'd be curious to understand what sort of property types and market types are now gaining biggest ground, are now gaining momentum in terms of both within the lens of how the developer eyes the property as well as how the prospective buyer eyes the property.
In fact, post-pandemic, there is a sudden shift in the consumer behavior and their need. Currently, the consumers are looking for a property with a very larger layouts, very focused on the safety and the hygiene part, and all sort of captive amenities. And in designing of their house, they were looking for a bigger house. Earlier house was used probably only for bed or maybe for a breakfast. I think now it has been converged and it has become a whole universe to them.
Now, Mr. Reddy, one of the silver linings of this pandemic has been the acceleration of digitization. And real estate is not necessarily one of those industries that's considered to be particularly tech savvy, but has that changed?
Yeah, naturally. And what happened today, during the pandemic, most of the people were working at home and they were doing all on the internet only.
Right.
So the internet, to be honest with you, some of the rural areas, now they got internet connection due to the COVID. The people who are working at home, even in their own villages, the internet is going there. Some of the companies, they have even provided them all the internet facilities also to them. So everything is changing now. Now in future also, if you see that network thing and other data centers and most of these things will come up in a big way, and this whole future will change in different directions.
Now, today all three of you gentlemen are seasoned developers. But if I were to ask you to go back in time to when you first got your start in this career, what do you know now that you wish you knew then?
When we started, there is a lot of excitement. There is a lot of interest to do things. But today, over a period of time, in the name of simplification, things have got complicated a lot. In fact, Reddy was talking about the judicial. Every new order, it is like a new law. Court of Justice is not to create law, as Mr. Reddy put it. Court of Justice is to interpret law, right or wrong, this way or that way. But things have changed over a period of time. I wish we were stuck in time machine 30, 40 years back. Honestly, things have become a lot more complicated today.
Fair enough. And Mr. Jain, when we look at consumer sentiment today, it really runs the range from skepticism to optimism. What might your words of advice or words of wisdom be for a prospective home buyer out there today?
See, first of all, what Hegde sir has told, a second his views. In fact, those were the golden days. There was no policy and multiple policy and overlapping of policy. Some of the policy and reforms we wanted to be compliant to this. I think practically it's not possible also, like each overlap each other. Everybody works in their own world. There is no synchronicity with those policy making bodies. So it has made very life miserable. In fact, to the customers also, those consumers also would like to say, here is a developer, here is an entrepreneur who comes and make the most difficult part. It says ना कि घर बना के देखो, शादी करके देखो, दोबारा नहीं करोगे आप. The most difficult part is building house. Here he comes and does. There is no gratitude to them. Even if you go to a restaurant and someone gives you good service, you give a tip and a word of appreciation. That gratitude towards the developer was always missing.
Mr. Hegde, please give us your views on the reforms and regulations specific to the state of Karnataka compared to the larger domestic real estate arena.
Yeah, it is both positive and negative. Positive because we had a section called 79A and B in the Land Reforms Act, which prevented a certain major sections to buy agricultural land. Now that has been relaxed. That is the positive part. But the negative part is we have done it after a long time after many of the states have repealed it. That's one. Two, as per the National Housing Policy in 1998, all the states were directed or suggested that the stamp duties had to be brought down. Karnataka had about 10-11% stamp duty, which has been brought down over a period of time to 5%. But the spirit behind the suggestion was to make a house more affordable to the ultimate purchaser, which has not happened because as they reduce the stamp duty, they've increased the guidance value. In effect, the percentage of stamp duty one pays on a property remains either the same or more.
Sure.
So that is not the purpose. Spirit behind it has not been followed. Government is always looking at raising rates and levies, and they have the impression is that by raising rates they'll be able to collect more for the kitty, but it is not so. Just see the Maharashtra example. They brought down the stamp duty from 5% to 2%. That's what I said. A bold initiatives have to be taken.
Mr. Reddy, do you echo those sentiments? What's your point of view?
So 100% I agree with Balakrishna Hegde. And in Karnataka, what is happening today, if you see that due to the this COVID situation, most of the states, they reduce the fees, building license fees, construction license fee, all these fees. But unfortunately, Karnataka increased 3 times, more than 300 times we have to pay now. So end of the day, it is added to the cost of the construction and we have to pass on that amount to the customers. End of the day, customer has to pay more.
Right.
So the government is not thought those kind of things. See, every time when there is a shortage of fund, they are increasing. That is not the way. You have to reduce it. Then only it has to motivate somebody to come and purchase.
Well, Mr. Jain, what's so interesting is that in the real estate arena, typically it's always buyer, versus builder, pitted against one another. But based on some of the reform suggestions that have come up in the course of this conversation, they seem to very clearly benefit both parties. So your take on how far a distance we are away from bold measures such as these being implemented?
In fact, whenever the customer wins, it's my victory only. It's never his like. So always we focus how to reduce his cost, how to make it more affordable, how to make it the whole journey, whole experiences very seamless and delightful. Okay. Customer is not king like that. Either we treat customer as a god only, like he's not none other than God. This is what the focus of every developer over here are there. Karke. What we fight with the government, we also know what is the affordability index of middle income salaried person. Karke. What we are looking at is if we can make it affordable based on their salaries, the volumes will increase. We fail to impress upon the government what is the business by margin and what is business by volume. It's same thing for the government also. They focus more on the margin rather than volume. The moment there is a shift in their perspective of the policy maker, is going to be win-win-win for all the three stakeholders.
All right. And by way of closing comments, I'll come to you, Mr. Reddy. Now, while the customer is very savvy, home ownership is ultimately extremely personal. So keeping that in mind, how does a developer in today's day and age ensure that all of the consumers' end goals, dreams, and aspirations ultimately materialize?
Yes, today the customer satisfaction is the ultimate. And I personally feel a customer is another salesman for me. So a customer, if he is satisfied, he will bring another 3 or 4 customers new customers to me. So I am in this business exactly 30 years over today. All these days, I may not meet the customer during the negotiation or only my sales team is to there. I was telling my sales team, the registration day I want to come to the sub-registrar office. I want to execute the sale lead. I want to see the face of the customer. How happy he is when he is taking the property once the registration is get over. I want to see that face. I want to see their happiness in their face. So the customer understands that. That is the biggest advantage in Bangalore. They know. Even just they want to go to a office to pay their property tax, how much trouble they are having, that they come to know. They are having that kind of sympathy and cordial relationship with us. So always I say customer satisfaction is my satisfaction.
Well, gentlemen, I think that makes for a wonderful note upon which to close. I have to thank all three of you for sharing such a rich range of perspectives from your personal journeys and your professional journeys. And with that, our special feature, Reviving India's Real Estate Landscape for Namma Permanent Address, a joint initiative by CREDAI Bengaluru and Times of India, partnered by ET Now, comes to a close. Thanks for watching.